Hi, are you struggling to get clean vocals in your mixes? I totally know the feeling of stacking plugins and effects to try to get the vocals to sit right in the mix. I'm not gonna lie, vocal mixing can be really tricky, and I know some of you have asked for this video for a long time, so here it is. Today I'll walk you step by step how to clean your vocals with mixing, and the best part, you get to hear some Swedish singing along the way. Now, if you have your own vocal mixing tips, please share them in the comments below so that we can help other aspiring producers. Right, I'm Mattias, let's take the tour. Okay, so vocal mixing techniques. Today I'm using BITWIG Studio, but you should be able to replicate these vocal effect chains with all the processing in whatever DAW of your choosing, may it be FL Studio, Logic Pro, Cubase, Studio One or whatever. That said, I am using a few paid third-party plugins too. Right, so this song is called Jaga med mig, or Hunt with me in English. You can read all the Swedish lyrics there on the right side, and it's for my upcoming album.
Har du sett vargens näste förut? Det breder ut sig så långt. De kommer alltid krypandes fram. De tar dig med, de tar din hand. Följ dina klor och jaga med mig. Filar fram i natten, bingo säker. Och en doft av blod, en doft av tårar. Och av tårar. Berätta allt du är och allt du ville bli. Kan du se in i framtiden min?
Okay, so let's first break down what I did to the verse vocals here. So first out in our vocal chain we have a noise gate. In BITWIG Studio it's called gate, and you should find a gate within the DAW of your choice too. Now the purpose of the noise gate is to prevent any noise going through when your singer is silent. Now if we look at the waveform here, you can see we have the voice here, some singing going on, and then we have silence. But it may not be complete silent, you maybe have some computer fans or birds chirping or whatever in the background, and you don't want that to go through the microphone. And that's why you add the noise gate. So if we press play here and look at the noise gate working, you can see that it will close down and prevent any noise when we have these silent parts.
Har du sett vargens näste förut?
And we can actually deactivate all the other effects here in the chain and just activate them one after another. Let's solo the vocal track so we can easier hear what's going on in the vocals.
Har du sett vargens näste förut?
So you can hear there's a little bit of hum going on here in the silent periods. So we activate our noise gate and let's see what happened to that silent part.
Har du sett vargens näste förut?
Much cleaner.
Det breder ut sig så långt.
Now you can of course make cuts like this and remove that silent part in between your vocal parts like this. But I don't think that was necessary in this case. But that's something you can do if you really want to have a super tight vocal takes. A noise gate is super easy to set up. You just set the threshold here, it's currently set to -40 dB, and everything below 40 dB will be silenced out by the noise gate, and everything above 40 dB will be audible. And the attack here is how fast the noise gate will be activated when it gets a signal, and the release here is how long it will take for the noise gate to close and deactivate the audio going through. And you can set this to around 80 to 100 milliseconds for the release, and a quite short attack here, because you wanted the audio to go through as fast as possible in this scenario. And I have this set to like minus 40 dB something. You can hear, if we set this to infinity, or the lowest value here, and press play, you will hear that noise again.
Har du sett vargens näste förut?
Now, as you heard, as we raise the threshold, all the noise that's way below down here will be cut out from the audio, and only the voice which goes above this threshold will go through the noise gate. Now the next plugin here in the effects chain is a Camel Crusher, which is a saturation plugin, and that's just to give the signal a little bit of extra boost in the mid-range and the high range to make the vocals a little bit more upfront and in your face. And you can see I have the mix here only set to 24%, so that's just a little subtle bit of distortion, of saturation. And we can listen to without and with this saturation.
Har du sett vargens näste förut? Har du sett vargens näste förut?
And let's drive that a little bit more so we can hear the more distinct difference.
Har du sett vargens näste förut? Har du sett vargens näste förut?
So you can hear we're driving the signal a little bit harder so it gets more upfront. And that's a really nice tip if you have like tame vocals that sounds a little bit lame and too soft and mellow, just to give that a little bit of saturation, maybe with Camel Crusher. Camel Crusher is free, by the way. It's a really old plugin, but it works really nice for vocals with this subtle tube distortion. The next device in my chain is just a basic gain device called Tool here in BITWIG Studio. That's just to adjust the volume a little bit, because Camel Crusher here drives the volume a little bit too much, I think. So I reduced 1.8 dB. The next plugin is like a de-esser plugin, and this one is from Baby Audio, and it's called Smooth Operator. And if we listen back to the vocals and look at the frequency spectrum here, this is the low end, and up here we can see 10 kilohertz, which is the high end. And there's where we have the sibilant and the S's and sh's. And for vocals, you usually want to reduce a little bit of that sibilance, because it can be a little bit too harsh and stick out a little bit too much in the mix. And that's exactly what I did here, because the background music is really mellow, so I didn't need too much sibilance. So let's listen back and see what the plugin is doing to the signal.
Har du sett vargens näste förut?
So you can see the plugin working in this range around from 5K to like 15K. And I have it all the way down here to get rid of a lot of sibilance. Now let's listen back, and I will deactivate the de-esser here.
Har du sett vargens näste förut? Har du sett vargens näste förut?
It might sound maybe too much when we're listening here in solo mode, but as soon as we listen to this within the context of the music, you can hear that it's in fact quite nice to get rid of that too poking sibilance.
Har du sett vargens näste förut? Det breder ut sig så långt.
The next plugin in my vocal chain is OTT, and that's just set to 90%. This is like a multiband compressor and enhancer. It makes your tracks really pop, and that's what I wanted to do with this vocal too, to make it more upfront and in your face. So a little bit of OTT goes a long way here. You can maybe set this even down to like 10%, and it will still give you a quite nice boost in the mid-range and the high end. So that's the OTT. And after that we have some equalization, and again I'm getting rid of stuff around 1.5K and a little bit around 6 to 7 kilohertz. It's like -3, -4 dB. And a low cut filter to get rid of the low end here, because we don't want any rumbling going through here. And I usually have this equalizer very early in the chain. We could actually have the equalizer even before the gate here, but some of these saturator plugins may add a little bit of low end. So we can actually have this EQ after the OTT compressor so that we know that we don't get too much low end or mud in the vocals. And after that we have some more saturation, and in BITWIG Studio I'm using this split plugin called Multiband Effects 2 to split the frequency band into like bands. The first one is below 500 Hz and the second band is above 500 Hz. And that's because I wanted to add saturation only to that upper range of the frequency spectrum. And I did that with the MSATURATOR, which is a free saturation plugin from Melda Productions. This is a really nice harmonic distortion plugin, and you have different modes here like soft to clip and folding. But I'm using this at a very soft setting here, soft 1, with the harmonics enabled and a little tiny gain boost. And with that, the vocal sounds like this.
De kommer alltid krypandes fram.
So here we have a very upfront and in-your-face vocals. Right, so after the saturation, it's time to smear the vocals a little bit, because now we have them up front, and now it's time to make the final effects here. And we do that with some delay and reverbs. The delay is from the Comeback Kid, but you can see the effect mix is set to 0 here. That's because I'm only adding this at certain points in the mix. And this comeback delay actually only happens at the end here of the song. The delay here is the Comeback Kid from Baby Audio, and it's a really nice delay plugin that I really like. It has some like tape settings, and you can set the swirl for the tape here and even make it sound like a sheep tape. And it has some ducking here. You can see I set the high and low cut frequencies here to make the delay really narrow and not too much in your face. I only wanted this delay to be like in the background and just to smear out and make the vocal sound a little bit longer. And we can actually listen to the last phrase here in the arrangement featuring the Comeback Kid delay here. Let's just deactivate the reverbs here after, so we can only hear this delay effect on the ending here.
Detta allt du är. Och allt du ville bli.
So that's some really nice smearing delay taps to make the vocal lines sound a little bit longer. Now the next effect after the delay is CRYSTALLINE, which is a really nice and versatile reverb from Baby Audio. And this one has a sparkle, and it's also a shimmer reverb. And it's all these kind of nice settings to change the tone and to smooth out the reverb more. And it's all over very nice UI and very user friendly. You can set the start and the end here, which will make the reverb like longer. So let's listen with CRYSTALLINE activated, and this acts like a room reverb for the vocals. Let's go back here to the beginning and listen to the first phrase.
Har du sett vargens näste förut?
And deactivated.
Det breder ut sig så långt.
And it's only set very subtly with like 18% in the dry wet mix. Now, while this vocal take was recorded with a little bit of subtle compression already at the recording stage, I did add the OTT here to act as the compressor for this signal. Now, it's super easy to forget that you can do volume automation rather than adding a compressor, because sometimes you might have two drastic changes in the volumes. Maybe if you record vocal takes on different days, maybe you have different length from the mic when recording the vocals, and then it can actually be a great idea to do the compression like volume automation instead of using a compressor. And that's exactly what I did here on the ending phrase, because you can see that we have the first part of the vocal here. It's quite low in volume, and then it bursts out to be louder in volume, and I prevent that by adding a volume mixer curve here with the automation, and just reduce the volume when we have these louder parts. And the same thing here for the rest of the vocals. So we could have done that with the compressor, but you can also do this with volume automation. And like I said, if you have too drastic changes in volume, maybe it's better to use volume automation rather than a compressor. Try it out, it might work for you too. Compressors are super nice to use, and some of them have flavors, some of them are more transparent, but if you have volumes jumping out, just try volume automation.
Detta allt du är. Och allt du ville bli.
And with this volume automation you could see that we had the vocal line being around -12 dB throughout the whole little section here. And that's the result of using volume automation for the vocals, for the audio. Right, so the next effect in line here is the spaced out, which is also a very, very versatile like delay / reverb plugin from Baby Audio. I highly recommend you download the demo and try this one out, because this is a really ethereal plugin. Super great for ambient music and this really lush and long reverbs or delays. We can see that with automation, the spaced out reverb is only happening here at the end, so let's listen to that one. Get this really long and lush ethereal reverb ringing out for the end of the track there. Then after all these smearing reverbs, we have again an equalizer to get rid of a little bit of the low mids here around 300 Hz. And now the final plugin in my vocal chain here is just a basic peak limiter, so that we know that the signal will never exceed 1 dB. Okay, so now to one of my favorite vocal mixing tricks, and that is to add some sparkle and ear candy on the silent parts of your vocals. And on this track I'm doing that by adding some delays and reverbs on the silent parts of the vocals. So I have a send track on this group. You can basically add the send effects in any type of DAW. And I'm sending a signal to this auxiliary track, where I have the Baby Audio spaced out reverb / delay. And the group here is only sending the vocals to this effect on the silent parts here. And the result is this.
Fäll ut dina klor och jaga med mig. Vila fram i natten, ingen går säker.
So that's a really nice tip, to add this kind of ear candy in the middle sections here where we don't have vocals. So if we listen with the music, you can hear that this is really adding some magic to the track.
Fäll ut dina klor och jaga med mig. Vila fram i natten, ingen går säker. Och en doft av blod, en doft av tårar, och av tårar. Och är detta allt du är och allt du ville bli? Kan du se in i framtiden min?
And on the verses you can also see that I do this trick on the silent parts here. I mix in the spaced out reverb / delay.
Kan du se in i framtiden min? Bortom solar, de lyser så klart. En liten varvar kommer krypandes fram. Han tar dig med, han blir ditt kall.
Okay, so it's time to summarize. First we add a noise gate to get rid of unwanted noise when we have silence in our vocal recording. After that we add a little bit of saturation with the camel crusher in this case, just a very subtle effect. You can of course also add a compressor at this stage, but since I had a little bit of compression during the recording, I didn't want to add that. I just did a little bit of volume automation at the final phrase there. But if you don't have a compressor when recording, I highly recommend you add a compressor at this stage. After that we have a de-esser. In this case I'm using the smooth operator, but you should be able to find some other de-esser in Logic or FL Studio. After that we have the OTT, which acts as my compressor and a little bit of booster exciter in the mid and high range. Then we have an equalizer to get rid of some harsh sounds again in the higher mids and the high end. And after that I added a little bit of saturation again, and after that we have all the effects like delays and reverbs and stuff. Okay, so depending on your specific track you might not need to add as many like saturators and stuff, although I had this set at a very subtle setting. But that said, it all depends on the track and what kind of vocal you're after for the track. In this case, as I mentioned, I was after a very upfront vocal. And for upfront vocals, it's a really great idea to add saturators to bring the vocals really upfront and give it some boost in the mid-range and in the high end. Right, so that's my tips for mixing vocals. Now, if you have any tips of your own for vocal mixing techniques, please let me know and share that in the comments, and maybe I can use some of these techniques in my future tracks. Right, so if you like this video, please let me know in the comments. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell so that you get a notice as soon as I release new videos. My name is Mattias, see you in the next one. Bye!